Okay, so here I'm gonna show you how to do the reframe exercise. And so this is about reframing your mindset. And this is based on a lot of scientific evidence. This is not just some worksheet that I came up with. I did distilled an easy way to do it so that it's very easy and shareable, but this is based in a lot of science, okay? And so this is all about a puzzle, and you have to unlock the puzzle in your brain. Every trigger that we have is almost like a puzzle. Anything that makes us angry, anything that makes us sad, anything that actually evokes any sort of feeling, even gratitude. You can reframe things with gratitude and celebrate them, and that locks it in even more into your brain. And so it's almost like you have a delete button in your brain and you have a rewire button, but the work has to be done. And a lot of times I've done this very frequently, almost multiple. Some weeks I do it 7 days a week. Some weeks 3 weeks, three days a week. Some weeks I'm better than others. I'm trying to get better at it to do it daily, because it really is amazing that every time I do this, there is a gift at the end. There is an insight that I gain at the end, because we do know that there is neuroplasticity. So we know that our brains can be rewired. And a lot of times, right before I start the exercise, I feel a lot of resistance. I don't want to do it. I feel tired, whatever is the reason. And then guess what? At the end of it, there is always some sort of insight that I gain. And the insight doesn't come until you actually do the exercise. That's the crazy thing. It doesn't come. You think, oh yeah, I know what the lesson is from this, but it doesn't really come until you finish the exercise. And so here's how it happens. There is an event in our lives that happen, right? Something happens. I'm going to give you an example of my own life, something that happened recently. This event happens, then that evokes a feeling. Then that feeling evokes a thought. That thought many times is some sort of bias. There are different types of biases. For instance, if you ask somebody who's a carpenter, they have a certain bias of looking at a problem. They're going to try to find the nail, and they're going to try to look how the wood works. And so their mindset is working very differently. If you ask a technology person, they're going to have a different perception of it. And so we have these different biases. And in a lot of psychological studies, they actually show that a lot of times when we think we're right, we're actually wrong. And we think we are right because we have biases. And so these biases go into a lot of studies in psychology. But for our purposes, it's important to know this, because many times when we are pissed off and when we are some sort of trigger, emotional trigger, that means that there are biases that we have from the moment that or from the way that we've grown up, the way that we've been raised, that are directing the way that we think. And the way that we think, these biases are distortions, are a little bit distorted actually from what would be real. And that can actually hurt us a lot, because let's say, for instance, I give you an example. Let's say like I came to a hotel, right? And let's say that the lady in front of the desk, was like really kind of down, and she didn't even say hello to me, and she was kind of regarded. And I can think to myself, oh man, she's like her customer service is not good at all. And I can start going into this, or maybe she doesn't like me, right? And so there's all these things that we can go to, right? I mean, right away we go into this, like, all these thoughts and feelings that we are thinking, and we think that this is reality. But in essence, we could be the next day in the hotel, and then we learn that this lady's husband maybe just passed that day, or that day before, or that week. And so then we have what is called a paradigm shift. We have an aha moment. We have a moment in which we're like, oh, now I get it. And so the thought before that was the bias, thinking that, oh, she doesn't like me, or thinking all these other things that were actually not real. And so that's the bias. And then the paradigm shift happens when we actually understand the whole picture. And so this is why it's so important to actually do these exercises, because then we understand the whole picture within our brain. at the best that we can, and then out of that we take some sort of insight, and then out of that insight we actually take action. Sounds good? And so I'm going to give you an example of something that happened in my life recently. So I'm going to give you the event. The event is that I'm about to fly to Hawaii, and I am checking, I'm about to check in. My family members are telling me, you know, hey, you're probably going to be late because of this, because of that. And so that kind of made me upset a little bit already. And then because I was like, no, I'm not going to be upset. I'm not going to be late. But then what happened is I was about to order my Uber, and I thought that the flight was leaving at 11:30, and actually I made a complete mistake, and the flight was actually leaving at 10:30. So it was leaving like 2 minutes from that one time. So I had no way I could make it to the airport, right? So I'm gonna go ahead and write here what happened, right? I'm gonna write everything that happened. And so as you can see on the screen, sometimes I put music when I do this. And so I put a little music just to get me going. And I'll just go ahead and run it through. And as you can see, you're gonna be able to see the whole exercise. So just gonna put in little music right here. Sounds good. So now I just stated what happened and what triggered me. Uh, and as you can see, one of the first things that I started doing at the airport, as you can see what I wrote, is that I started blaming, actually, once I wasn't able to get a flight, I started actually blaming the person who makes the reservations. I started blaming my wife. I started blaming the airline. And so all these three people started getting the blame, right? And so then I'm gonna go into the next episode, into the next part of it, which is the feeling, right? What was it that I was feeling? And so as you can see here, what I was feeling, I was pretty irritated. I was upset. I was pissed off. I was discouraged. And part of me was feeling like I'm a failure in some sort of way, because there is there is a lot of things that have been happening. Been involved in a lot of things that have been happening right now, and that has led me to making some mistakes and doing some things that I knew I could have performed better, right? And so this was almost like, for me, I was using it as a confirmation to tell myself that, you know, that I was a failure, that I was missing this flight, that I made a mistake, and then I was pissed off at all these people, okay? So I'm gonna go into the next part. Okay, so here you can see that what I was telling myself, the stories was that, you know, that I was a failure for doing this, that my wife was somehow responsible because she told me um, that I had to, you know, make sure I was probably going to miss my flight. And then the person who makes the schedule, that she was incompetent. And so, take all those things and we're going to pick one. I'm going to pick the I am a failure, right? And so then I'm going to go into, okay, what is the bias there? Why was I saying that to myself? Or how can I call this? And so we go here into a list what is called cognitive distortions, right? And so out of this list, I'm gonna pick what this is. And so telling myself that I am a failure could be, look at this one, for instance, there's a magnification. So it's exaggerating or minimizing the importance of an event. That could be it. How about catastrophizing? Catastrophizing means seeing only the worst possible outcome. Like I'm gonna lose my contract, or those thoughts were actually going through. Overgeneralization, making broad interpretation from a single few events, like saying, oh, that lady is not competent. She's not competent. That's like overgeneralization. It was just one thing that happened, and it wasn't even her mistake. It was the fact that we had communicated so many times on an email that this didn't go into my regular calendar. So it's not that she's not competent, right? So I see multiple ones. I see overgeneralization. I see jumping into conclusion. This could be one of them. Emotional reasoning is pretty important too. Is the assumption that an emotion reflect the way things are. For instance, I feel like a bad friend, therefore I must be a bad friend. So I felt like a failure in that one moment for the one incident, so I must be a failure, right? And so it's so crazy that, I mean, we all have these thoughts, and every level has a devil. It doesn't matter, you know, it doesn't matter how people you might think that they're successful or not, or accomplished. This is going on in some sort of level always. And so this is a great way to do it, to actually reframe these thoughts. So I can see here that that I was overgeneralizing. So I was making an interpretation on her, thinking that she's incompetent, right? Then I was also doing jumping into a conclusion that I am a failure. And also another one that's an emotional reasoning here too, you know. Oh, I felt that my wife had something to do with it, so therefore she must. And so I'm gonna put here over generalization, and I'm gonna put jumping into conclusions. And this is so important because for a chronic disease like what we're having to deal with in this course with type 2 diabetes, if there is something that triggers you, like, oh, I can't not eat that, or if I stop eating, my family will stop loving me, or, you know, whatever it is, you run through it. And at the end of the time, you're going to see what happens. And so, okay, so now what is the alternative? What would be the opposite of these three things? So the opposite is that she is competent, right? The opposite is that I made a mistake, that I wasn't a failure, that I just made a mistake. And that I'm a success, right? That's the opposite. The opposite is that my wife was actually helping me. And so you can see already, like, I feel, even doing this right now, like, I feel better about this whole thing already. And so then from that, now I know that she is competent. I am a success. I made a mistake. And then my wife was helping me. What is a useful action that I am compelled to take? Many times we're compelled to take action. So for instance, what I'm going to do is make sure that anytime that a reservation is made for me to travel, that it goes into my calendar. And I'm going to ask them to do that, to be, so my action will be to send an email to clarify, to make sure why was there a difference in the emails, and how to send the email so that it goes into my calendar like it was doing 90% of the times. And so it's like I already have a good feeling about this whole thing. I know what was happening. And so this is what reframing looks like. And you could underestimate it. And it's almost like going to the gym, because you have to build a muscle to be able to do it. There is many different exercises, but this is the simplest one for you to be able to do, and the one that has been actually more scientifically proven. This exercise right here is actually as effective for people who have depression as medications, as effective for people who have anxiety as medications. So do not underestimate this exercise right here. It is amazing how many insights you can gain from this. This exercise right here has helped me through some of the hardest times in my life. And it can help you too overcome this diabetes and overcome the limiting belief systems and the limiting triggers that are going to inevitably be in front of you as you go through this journey.